A24 Civil War, the latest movie with Alex Garland. A24 and Alex Garland teaming up once again after distributing Ex Machina almost a decade ago. We have this film that follows a civil war that has broken out in the United States in the near future with multiple factions working together. We see the Western forces being the main ones, which is California and Texas, pretty much fighting for their own right to be independent, not really fighting together. More of it, your enemy is my enemy, let's do this. And we see a president who has become almost tyrannical on their third term. The president is played by Nick Offerman, and that's how the movie pretty much starts off. Before we get any further into it, yes, Ending Explained, we're going to go through the whole movie and then talk about the ending. That's how I do it. And also, we are about 1,000 subscribers away from 30,000. Once we reach 29,000, and maybe by the time you're watching this, we are running a giveaway. At 29,500, we'll announce a winner, and at 30,000, we'll announce another one for a movie prize package. All you have to do is be subscribed and be commenting below whether you love it or hate this movie, and that gets you an entry into the giveaway. But let's talk about the film and everything that we learned from it, some of the themes and its ending, and where does it go from here. So our main character is Lee Smith, played by Kirsten Dunst, who is this war photojournalist who has been doing this for a long time, and we see that it's starting to sort of catch up on them as they have these recurring nightmares, all of the war photos they've taken over the years. You have Joel, who is played by Wagner Moura, who is a journalist as well, always partnering up with Lee. They seem to be more of a writer and always trying to figure out what the next story is going to be. You have Sammy, who is played by McKinley Henderson, who is working for the New York Times and is sort of a mentor for both Joel and also for Lee Smith. And then you have Jesse, played by Cailee Spaeny, who is a young and up-and-coming war journalist who is excited to pretty much tag along with them on this road trip. The movie starts off with the President of the United States, which is played by Nick Offerman, trying to address the people and talking about the Western forces and how they're going to take them down. And it looks like they're a little bit nervous as well. So it looks like things are pretty much escalating to a big finale here. Where we catch the movie start off as well for the journalist is Lee taking pictures at this event where they're going to be giving water. It looks like a lot of the United States is more impoverished than there was before, and they're trying to sort of limit how much people and resources they can get. During this event, however, chaos ensues because people wanting water, being thirsty and hungry, of course, they're going to be desperate. And we see as almost a riot ensues between the police and the people over the water. Lee catches Cailee Spaeny's character of Jesse as well there. They get hurt a bit, and as they're trying to help them get back up, they spot this suicide bomber who is running towards the water tank. Lee's able to get Jesse out of the way and tells her to be careful next time. Later that night, we catch up with Joel, Sammy, and Lee as they're talking about what the next move is. Lee and Joel are going to be going to DC to try and take a picture of the president and also get a quote. Sammy wants to tag along. They say they can just be dropped off at Charlottesville before DC. Kind of a little bit of a wall is put up by Lee and Joel because they just don't think Sammy can make it out there. They feel it's too dangerous. He's older and he needs to be more careful. Sammy just wants to be there and get to Charlottesville. And that's it. The next morning, Lee sees that Jesse's character is tagging along on the road trip. It has some words with Joel about this being a bad idea. It's too dangerous. They're too young. They shouldn't be coming along. Joel says, how much older were we when we wanted to get started? And Lee's just like, it's on you if anything happens to her, and they just go off on the road trip now. At the first stop that we see them go on is this very small town with this gas station. There's like 3 guys there guarding the gas station. They need to get gas, however, and after some back and forth where they don't really want to give them gas, they pretty much get them to give them gas, but they pay a pretty hefty price for it. At this stop, however, Jesse spots something and notices there's 2 guys that are being like hung up, and they're just hanging there, beat up very badly, bloody pulp and all of that. One of the first disturbing parts about the film, honestly, is right here as you get these very fast close-ups of these guys just like bulging eye, blood all over. The other guy who was there guarding the gas station comes up to Jesse and says he's proud of this, what he did. He even says one of the guys that's up there, they went to high school together, but he doesn't really care because the guy never talked to him. And we see that Lee's character comes from behind them, asks what happened. He says they were looters and this is what they get. Gives Jesse the chance to pretty much seal their deal, and then the guy gives Jesse a chance to seal their fate. Says we can shoot him or we can beat him up a little more, or what do you want us to do? Lee sees Jesse's like almost having a breakdown and says, hey, why don't we just take a picture of you and we'll move on ahead of you with the 2 guys right there. So the guy just gets in the middle. He puts like a souvenir trophy type pose with his gun, and they just take a picture and they move on. Jesse's rattled by this as they move on from this whole event, and Lee says that she has to get used to it, that this is how things are, and that you're you're so not supposed to ask questions because all you're doing is just documenting it so other people can ask the questions. That's all you're going to do. They move on after this whole ordeal, and then we see them arrive to this small town as well that's not really that bad. It looks like what the United States would have looked like before a civil war. People are out in the parks, people are out shopping, kids are playing. It looks like totally normal life, and they're wondering how this possibly could be. They go into the shop, the person just says, hey, we mind our own business. What they do out there, that's on them. In the rest of the United States, we're gonna try to be as normal as possible. We then see that it's because they are guarding this town pretty highly, and we see that there's like snipers on the roof and all of that, and that's how they're keeping their peace, I guess, and they're not really taking a side or a stand on anything. And I think it's very reminiscent of how we see a lot of things in today's society, with people refusing to take a side on one side or the other and just sitting back and not really saying anything. And it's kind of crazy because you never know when it can creep up on you, I think. And that's one of the things that they talk about, is that not taking a stand can sometimes be a bad thing as well. And then one of the parts that made me jump was when they get to this like sniper that's just shooting at these two soldiers who are on the ground, and they are there with them waiting to see who the sniper is. And Joel's character is asking them like, who's shooting? Whose side are you on? What's happening? And they're just like, hey, what does it matter? We don't have really a side. It's just everybody's out against each other, and this guy's just shooting us, so we're just going to shoot them. We don't ask questions right now because this guy's just trying to shoot us. And I think all of these moments and instances that we have with all of these different perspectives and these different places they're going to and meeting these people, it's just interesting how this war that you would think is just one side or the other side turns into something that's more multifaceted, where all of these people have these different perspectives on it and what's going on. And it's not really just a black and white thing. It's really a gray all over the areas that they're in. Eventually they're able to take out the sniper and they can go on their way. One of the places they also stop at is this refugee camp, and I thought it was interesting to see this here because it's something that you would not really think about is something that's necessary during this time. But the more I thought about it, it's like, of course, they're destroying buildings, they're destroying homes with the airstrikes, with the military, with the soldiers and all of that. So of course people were going to be displaced and they needed somewhere to stay. And as we know, the situation in the United States is already dire. So maybe a lot of these people have really just had this one spot and then that was it, and no savings, nothing like that. They would definitely need somewhere to be. And so I thought it was very eye-opening to see that scene and just think about it, because I hear about this in a lot of countries that are war torn, and it's kind of crazy to see it be done in your own country and see how that would be as well, and really puts things into perspective, I feel. Then we see two of Joel's colleagues and Lee's meet up with them, and these characters are Tony and Bohai. Then we see Tony is like, hey, I'm gonna do something real cool. They're driving these two trucks and he decides to jump into the other one while they're going at it, and he goes into the car with Lee, Joel, Sammy, and also Jesse. Jesse wants to try it and goes into the car with Bohai, and then they speed up and pretty much leave Lee, Sammy, Tony, and Joel behind. And Lee gets pissed off about this because she says Jesse needs to be in this car right now. It's not safe. They try to catch up to the truck and it's nowhere to be found. We see then that their car is just stalled out there. There's nobody, and Jesse and Bohai are nowhere to be found. Eventually Lee, Joel, Tony, and Sammy get off, and as they get closer to where they are, they see that there's like these two soldiers that have them at gunpoint and have them kneeling down, and there's like this mass grave that they have where they're just dumping bodies. They decide to go over and try to figure things out. Sammy stays behind because they say he's too old, and we see as Joel is trying to sort of calm everybody down and try to negotiate what's happening here. It seems that Jesse Plemons' character, who is one of the soldiers, and the other one are just like these extreme nationalists, and they're trying to ask the journalists where they're from and what are they doing and all of that. And Jesse Plemons' character just starts off by just shooting Bohai, which just makes Tony's character go into this mental breakdown because that's like one of their close friends, it seems. And then we see as Tony answers that they're from Hong Kong, that Jesse Plemons' character just shoots him, and it just turns into full-on chaos as Joel and Lee and Jesse just get frightened and they're trying to figure out what's the next move, and the soldiers are just getting crazier, more irate. But then Sammy comes through with the truck and smashes through them, and let me tell you, both times I've watched this, people were just clapping at that scene because it was such a tense moment that you see all of this happening. You're not entirely sure what's going to be shown or what's about to happen, and you see this just intense moment. Jesse Plemons really knocked it out of the park with that scene. I really think that their character was such a despicable and dark and just twisted mind, honestly, and the way that they portray that in the movie was just outstanding. One of the things, however, that happens when Sammy's character comes through is that Jesse's character also gets knocked into the mass grave, and you just see that this just completely rattles them and shakes them. They're able to make it out and they all get out, but one of the soldiers just starts shooting Sammy and pretty much mortally wounding them. And we see as Sammy just dies on the way there as they're about to get to Charlottesville, and that's pretty much what happens to Sammy. They die as they get to Charlottesville. It just looks like things are just so bleak right now. They also find out that the generals have already surrendered and that the Western forces are starting to move in. So it doesn't look that good for them trying to get the quote or the picture of the president, which makes Joel even more pissed because it looks like Sammy died for nothing. They, however, end up just going with the Western forces to still try and see if they can get a picture and a quote from the president. And these last 30 minutes of the movie are some of the most tense moments in the whole movie, because you just follow as Jesse, Joel, and Lee and this army are just going through DC, tearing everything apart, getting to the White House, destroying the Lincoln Memorial. One of the most graphic scenes, honestly, and just jaw-dropping was to see that Lincoln Memorial just blow up and fall down and crumble. And during this whole thing, you see as Lee is having a PTSD moment, and it seems that it has finally all caught up to them. Joel's trying to help them as much as they can, and we see that Jesse is just being a hotshot, as Sammy had said earlier in the film, and just going through taking pictures, and the soldiers are just trying to pull them back because it's getting too dangerous too quick. And you see Jesse's not really understanding this. It looks like they're just running on adrenaline, and it's like a different side of the coin, really, as you see that Lee, who is more seasoned and a veteran at this, is now being torn down by everything that has happened over the years, and also now this moment right here, the death of Sammy. It's just a lot has just been weighing down on Lee, and Jesse is somebody who's trying to prove themselves, and you could compare it almost to like a veteran soldier who's seen everything, who's done all of this stuff, and maybe a young soldier who's just coming into it all and who feels they're going to prove something, who has this youth in them. And that's, I think, the two ways to see this. And you have Joel just being a witness to this, almost like he's journaling these things as he sees how Jesse's acting and how Lee's acting, and you see the facial reactions that Joel has. Eventually they start to close in on the president, and there's these moments where they are getting like very close to the door and they're about to head in there. And then one of these moments, Jesse just decides to go forth and try to get a quick shot. And then somebody comes out with a gun and starts shooting. And Lee knows that what's about to happen to Jesse and decides to save Jesse by getting in front of the gunfire. And we see as Lee gets shot and killed. And right before that, Jesse snaps a photo. And this goes back to a dialogue they had earlier in the film where Jesse said, "If I were to get killed, would you take my picture?" And Lee says, "What do you think?" And we see as Lee dies and Jesse has taken out this photo. They eventually end up going to the president, both Joel and Jesse with the soldiers. The president is about to get killed, but Joel says, "Wait, I need a quote," and asks the president for a quote. The president is just there and says, "Don't let them do this. Don't let them kill me." And we see that Joel says, "Good enough." And we see as the soldiers kill the president, and then Jesse takes the photograph and the movie ends. A lot happened in this movie. There's a ton of things to dissect, and I do want to go over all of the scenes in a longer video, and this is already getting long, so I don't want to make it too long. And I think that ending really works with what Sammy told Joel at the beginning of the film, is that you go into this like whole thing with this president, this tyrant, and you want them to give you this quote, this explanation of everything that happened these last 14 months, of where their headspace is, what were they thinking, things like that, but they're just going to end up disappointing you. And that's exactly what Joel saw. They ended up just getting disappointed because the president was just there being a coward after everything that they have just caused. Now, there is no explanation about why the Civil War even happened in the first place, and I don't think there needs to be, because I think the movie is more trying to talk about the horrors of the war. It doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is look at what's happening now because of everything that got us here. And it's showcasing the division and lack of communication that happens and how journalists aren't taken seriously. So in the end, we see that both Sammy and Lee died. They died doing what they love. And this also goes to something that I talked about when Sammy died to Jesse, is that Sammy wouldn't have gone out anyway. They were pretty much always going to do what they loved. They didn't want to quit. And Lee sadly died the same way. They were here. They were trying to take the photograph of the president. They were trying to make it in there. They knew the risk and all of that. They've been in war-torn countries. They've seen so many atrocities and horror. And now they were seeing it in their own country, which was something that Lee also addressed at some point to Sammy in the movie, where they talk about how they don't understand how the country came to do all of this, to be in the Civil War after all of the photographs that she had taken, that she tried to warn about happening in other countries, that she hoped to never see in her own country, and now she's seeing it as well. And Jesse, I think, was just getting really too ahead of themselves. They were being a hotshot. Sammy had called her that earlier in the film, and this is definitely an instance of it, as we see in those last 5 minutes of the film. They're jerking in and out. They're trying to get as many photographs as they can. The soldiers are yelling at her. They're trying to pull her back. They're trying to tell her to stop. She just keeps going and going, and eventually it catches up to them. But I think Lee really felt some sort of connection to Jesse over this period. They felt that Jesse was somebody that they knew, maybe even themselves at some point, and felt this sort of connection to Jesse that made them want to go and save them and shield them from all of this. And Jesse taking the picture of Lee as well just goes to showcase that Jesse needs to broadcast this moment. Lee is a hero. Lee saved her. Lee is going to be remembered for this. This is the last photograph of Lee that there is. And I think that that was such a great moment in the film to see, and one of the moments where everybody in the crowd got pissed, trust me. Everybody was just like, no, why? And everybody was just like, please, when Cailee Spaeny's character was just zipping through everybody and trying to be the hotshot. I think the ending with the president as well, like the whole thing of us not really getting the explanation from the president, not really seeing Nick Offerman's character of the president throughout, really showcases just how senseless this whole thing was, right? We are anticipating, what's the president going to say? What's the president going to do? How are they going to react to everything? And they're just on the floor crying and just being this coward. And you have all of these expectations of what it's going to be. And I think it's just something with war, and you think about wars and all of that, and you think about the glory and the gloating and all of that that the winner does. But at the end of the day, you look back at everything and you see that it was just all senseless. It was horror, death, and it was just destruction, and nobody really wins in a war. Look at all the baggage that they have at the end. And I think that's definitely a very important part about the film that it wants to talk about, is this is senseless. It's horrific. It should not have happened at all. And it doesn't matter what the ending is or what answer you get or whatever you're trying to look for, because it's never going to live up to all of this destruction, horror, and death that has happened because of it. And that's just my 2 cents on the film. I really do love it as a love letter to photojournalism, to journalism in general. And Alex Garland has talked about this as well, that this was a movie about that. He didn't want Civil War to be a film where they were going to try and talk about the politics, the two sides or whatever of a nation, and try to say, this is what got us into the Civil War. This side's fighting for that. This side's fighting for this. I think that would have been the cheapest way to make this movie. I like the way that it just showcases, this is where we are. These journalists are showing you what's happening on all perspectives from everybody in this country. What do you think about it? Like, it leaves you to ask the questions, and that's exactly what Civil War does, and it does it in the best way possible. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on Civil War. Full ending here. I might condense this video, maybe it went a little bit too long, but I will have a full video talking about the politics and everything throughout, as well as the scenes, because I want to talk about key scenes. So that's going to be a whole video coming out this weekend, so stay tuned for that. But as I said, we are running a giveaway, 29,000 subscribers. So all you have to do is be subscribed and comment below something, whatever you want, whether you hate or love the film. Both giveaway winners will get a movie package, so stay tuned for that. But as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions. And also, we are funding our own horror film right now, so go check it out on Seed and Spark. And I'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.